Hello, welcome to the Low Code Café. This is episode number 164 for June 19, 2024. Today we're going to be talking about audit trails, exploring how you can track and automate the audit trails within Plantain app. So we'll get into audit logging, displaying, restoration, and maybe as a bonus, we'll get into the is deleted feature. But before we jump into that, let me introduce myself. I am Dale Warner, Head of Support for Plantain App. Today we also have with us Patrick Anderson, Technical Success Manager for Plantain App. So between the two of us, we might be able to present a good topic and maybe answer a few questions along the way. This Low Code Cafe is an event we do bi-weekly, every other Wednesday at 10 a.m. Central Time. It's an opportunity for us to update you on what's going on with Plantain App, demo some features, but the biggest part of it is always hands-on low coding. So do engage with us. You'll hear stories from our team and the community, and if you have something that might be valuable to the community, step forward, be a guest speaker. We record all these and put them out on YouTube. So youtube.com/plantainapp will get you all of these previous episodes. Do go out there, subscribe, hit the alarm bell so you know when we publish new content. These are usually published one day after we hold this session. Our agenda today, I'm going to talk from the trenches of support a little bit, just talk about things that are going on in support. And then the biggest piece, we'll do hands-on low coding, dealing with audit data. Do engage with us. There's a chat window, there's question and answers, you can raise your hand, you can use the feedback form that's part of the emails that we send to you. Just scheduling, the Low Code Cafe, as I said, is bi-weekly, and the next live webinar will be July 3rd. So from the trenches of support, version 125, we just released version 1.26 on June 14, just a few days ago. And so version 125 is, I would expect limited hotfixes after this. There might be a few that come through, but we won't do a whole lot of content, a whole lot of new releases unless it's important, or if we're just finishing up some things that were already in progress against 125. So today we have one, and then since we just released it a week ago, we have a hotfix that's coming out for 126 as well. So we'll look at those two right now. The first, on version 125, we came out with an enhancement for OpenID Connect. So if you happen to use OpenID Connect, this is a whole new set of features that it allows you to run a custom action stack to help identify and map the user that's signing on to the user of the system. So if you're using that, you might want to dig into it and see if that would be something that will help you, but it's an optional feature. And then in 126 workflows, and we'll dig into this one a little bit. In 126, we changed the way when you're in workflows and you do a test run, you get to see records by their display name, and that's a very nice way to be able to find things and work with them. Unfortunately, the way that we previously did it by ID is often helpful to users to test the low-code developers, and we had eliminated that. So now we're bringing that back. So let's see what that one looks like. I've made a simple workflow in a test system here, and so the input parameter is a contact. Its type is a type of entity called contact, and so when we run, and then the processing, it's not doing anything. It's just starting and ending. The output, I'm outputting the contact ID. So when we run this thing, this is the save and test search area, and so you'll see that you can select a name, a contact by by name. And when we run it, we end up with a contact ID. So it's working as designed, but you can't search for user number 11 in here. And so that's a little bit inconvenient if you have a particular record that you want to run it against. So that's what this hotfix is about fixing. If we go into, and I thought it would be worth exploring installing Hotfix live, just to make sure we understand the process. You can install hotfixes by going to updates and looking at the hotfix tab. And so we, in updates, we see all the things that are installed. We see our hotfixes, and we want to install this one. We can see the details of it. That's the same thing I was just showing you, the workflow test run one. And so we can just click install, and yes, this will take just a minute to install. So again, with this installed, and I'm kind of excited to see it. I haven't seen this one yet. I wasn't involved in testing it, but we should be able to now enter a workflow, enter a record ID in addition to using that name. So let's see how it works. While that finishes up, I'm going to move on a little bit. Another thing that I wanted to, we'll come back to that in just a second. Another thing I wanted to talk about, I had an interesting support case this week. And I guess the underlying issue is that there was an error message that wasn't particularly friendly. And so there's an action that we have called partially update entity. This is a way to change a record. You give it a record number that you or an ID number that you want to change. You provide the values that you want it to change. And for this particular client, it was working most of the time. Every time he tested it in the workflow engine with this test run, it worked. But he would have a user that would sign on and it wouldn't work. And the error message that he was getting was plant an app, partial update entity, and then it would show the entity name. Instead of entity, it might say, for example, contact. And it would tell you the action number that was failing, but it just said failed to run, error trying to partially update a record. So this error message, again, isn't particularly friendly. What it's trying to say is that you don't have the rights to make this change. And that was the underlying issue. Our update security is based on whoever the created by user ID is and the roles that are associated with that entity. So let's jump in and take a look at those things. I'm going to jump back now to what I was just talking about a minute ago. If we run this same workflow from a minute ago, now we see that the IDs are present as well as the names are present. So you could search for a record by ID and run it that way. And so that's that. So that hotfix is very useful, very harmless. I would advise installing it. Anyway, security. So when you have an entity, and it doesn't matter which one, but I'll take a look, for example, at the contact entity. It has a permissions tab, and it says what users can do what activity. So if you're a user of this system, you can't see contacts, you can't edit them, you can't delete them. In this case, in the user's case that I was dealing with, this was set to they could view their own records and they could edit their own records. So if your user ID is number 5 and the record was created by number 5, it would allow you to edit it. So our security is based on the created by. In the particular case, when we drill down into the data that he was working with, the record was owned by user number 1, but he was trying to edit with user number 5, and it was throwing an error. So it's a permissions error, and the solution then, there's a couple of different solutions. One would be, if you want to be more permissive, you could say that they can read and edit all their data, all entries, and then you're controlling access to it by making sure that only the right people can run the code in question. But this partially update action would now allow editing a different one. So that was one solution. Another solution might be that if you want to maintain that it's only viewable and editable by their own entries, then perhaps the right answer would be to make sure that the created by gets updated to be the user in question. So either way, but it just has to match, and it's all controlled by the roles of the the roles that are associated with the user ID and the permissions that are set for the entities. So just one of those things that if you don't know about it, it might take you some time to sort out. If you are familiar with it, it's a pretty straightforward solution. So that's from the trenches of support. We have I wanted to mention that and encourage you to engage in Campfire. The Low Code Campfire happens on Fridays this same hour, 10 a.m. Central Time. And as a programming note, we won't be holding that episode on July 5. I don't think anybody's going to be working, at least in the United States. Anyway, that's pretty much a holiday. We have some links for this episode, which Patrick has been kind enough to put on the webinar chat, so you can look for it there. But it shows you how to register for the Low Code Campfire. The recordings get us to the YouTube, our Plant and App channel. A link to our community portal, which is a great place to get questions answered or to learn more about our product, make suggestions, and that webinar feedback form that I mentioned at the start. This final link, Uncover the Power of Audit Logging. Back a few episodes ago, maybe half a year ago, we did kind of part one of this, talking about audit logging. And I'm going to, since it's been so long, I'm going to cover that part of it quickly again. But if you wanted to go back and watch the whole episode, that's going to be out there for you as well. So here we go. Now on to the biggest part. We'll do our hands-on low coding, and we will explore enhanced tracking. So our objectives for today, we want to understand the need for audit logging. We want to be able to log the data changes that are happening with your entities, and then figure out how to use the audit data. So the idea behind audit logging is you have data in entities or data tables. You want to capture when things are inserted or deleted or updated, those normal activities within a SQL table. And so what we're going to be doing then is logging all of these data changes, and as so those data changes are going to go into a table, and then we can do things with them later. And there's really a couple of ways to do that. One is with code and complexity and lots of work, or another way is simply and completely. And of course, that's the way that we're going to focus. Low Code Plant and App provides a simple and complete way to log all your data changes if you want to. And so we're going to turn that on. And then in terms of using that audit data, the question then becomes, how do you view it? How do you report on it? What do you do with it? One of the things that we're going to do with it is to be able to revert records. So, for example, if somebody accidentally makes a change to a contact record, deletes an address or a phone number, this audit logging data is going to have the old version and the new version. It's going to show the change, who changed it, so you can see where perhaps an error occurred, but also you can put it back the way it was. So that's the kind of thing we're going to fix. And then another possibility would be to use this to drive events. Meaning they were a lead and now they've become a customer, and you want to do some things. So using the audit data to detect that change and to do something with it. So with all that said, here's our agenda for today. We're going to review what's been done in the past. We're going to rebuild it because it's pretty easy to build, and then so you'll be able to see the whole procedure from start to finish. Once we've got it rebuilt, what we did in the previous episode, rebuilt, we'll enhance that to show audit details, not just track the data, but make the data very consumable by adding a details table. We will work some on visualizing that data, be able to see these audit details as a subtable, which is an interesting technique all on its own. And then we'll go on to enhance it. We'll make a simple restore capability. We'll add some data-driven events like the lead becomes a customer kind of functionality. And depending on how much time we have, there is the is deleted functionality, which might be a useful technique, and it would just folds right into to this discussion. So that's a bonus if we get there, but we will fill the hour. All right, let's get ready. We don't, that has already been talked about. Let's review. So I've already talked about this previous webinar, 148, where we talked about the power of audit logging. And the functionality for that is built into this particular website that we're going to take a look at. There is a contact table, and so if we view our contacts, we have people, and if we edit a record, we have Bill Jackson here, but if we edit Bill's record and change his name from Bill to Billy, there's audit happening on this automatically. And so if we were to go and look at our audit table, we can see all the previous changes. And so this is saying that on the contact table, record 3, that there's been some modified data. And since this is a little bit hard to, sometimes JSON is hard to visualize, so I'm going to use this viewer and clean it up. This says that the last modified by changed from user 16 to user 2, modified date changed to today's date. It was previously this date, and we changed from Bill Jackson to new value Billy Jackson. So we're capturing all that by this old functionality, and this is the column this is the information that we're going to focus on today. So that's what we built the last time. As I said, we're going to rebuild it today just so that we can see the whole thing. So let's go ahead. We'll get started. And so I have a brand new, never been used base website, a Plant and App website called Cafe 164. And we're going to start building from scratch here. Of course, I have to log in. And as we do so many times, in the background here on another screen, I have my development. And so we'll be doing a little bit of copy-paste development, but hopefully you can follow along. So within the configuration area of this empty website, we're going to do our first entity, and we're going to do the exact same thing. We're going to have maybe a couple of enhancements here and there, but we're going to have a contact entity. So we're going to build a contact entity. I'm going to turn on SQL Console. I think we might need that before we get done, so we'll add that here to our menu options. But we're going to create an entity, and I'm going to create it by importing it. Saves me the typing, so we'll say import it, and I've just exported it from another system. When we create an entity, we can look at the properties of it. So I have the contact entity now. These other ones, by the way, show up. They're just core entities and are actually there when your system installs. But the one we cared about, the one we just installed, was contact. And so the contact entity has this general, it's called a contact. The plural is contacts. I didn't specify a parent page, so this is going to show up in the top level menu of the site. And we have properties like name, city, rating, old ID. I'm going to add address as well as, which will just be a text field, and then I'll have a status, or I'm going to say it's a type. This will be so we can illustrate the lead turning into a contact kind of functionality. And then permissions tab, we're not going to worry about, but because as a developer, we have all kinds of rights to it. By default, users of the site wouldn't have rights to it. So that's the way it comes in. These are things you need to think about in a normal development, but we're just going to flash forward through them here today. Let's see if that message was important for me. No. All right. So what are we doing? So we have contacts, and we could, if we went to the front of the site, by importing that, Plantain app automatically builds contacts and all of the functionality necessary to show them and add new ones. We see our fields, address and type, all there. All these fields are already there, and so we could add contacts. But what we want to do also is to create an audit table so that when anything happens to contact, it gets automatically audited. So again, I'm going to import that data, but so we'll import not the data, the entity setup. I'm exporting audit from my previously set up system. We'll import it and then take a look at it. So the audit table, again, I'm not spending any effort trying to figure out where these show in the menu. It's just going to show in the top level menu, but we're going to have an audit table, and it has properties like the Plantain app ID number, the table name, what type of change happened, and then fields with the JSON data, the modified JSON data. Again, these are the modifications that happen relative to a particular change, and that's the one we're going to be focusing on. So it's got that, and again, there's permissions, but we're not going to concern ourselves with these. So this is the table that's going to hold those any kind of audit changes. So now we've got that, and so now we've got to do the work. We wanted to create an automation that says anytime anything changes in contact, that information is going to get posted. Those changes will be posted in audit. We're going to do that through our automation section, and we're just going to create a simple job that will do that. So we want to create a new job, and the job name is going to be, I'm not going to assign a namespace today. Again, I'm going to be a little bit lazy. In our settings, the name of this job is going to be audit contacts. Now, audit contacts, if we don't tell it, among the settings that we're going to want to tell it, we can specify the name of a user that this will operate under. And I'm going to put my username here so that anytime this job runs, it's just going to add things into the audit table as if it were me. In the absence of this, you might get an error. You almost certainly would get an error because if you're not a user, you won't have rights to add a record into the audits table. So when you do an automation job, there's these initial settings, but then there's triggers. When do you want this job to act? And there's different types of triggers. And for example, you can say something that's time-based. You can say repeat every day or repeat every 15 seconds. We want to work based on what happens in the database. So when a record is inserted into the database, and the database that we're concerned about is contact, we want this trigger to do something. We want this job to record the information. In the same way, if they update the database for the contact table, we want it to wake up and do something. And if they delete the record, we will also delete a record out of this. So if they delete, update, insert, update, delete, if they do any of these three core functions on a record, that it will automatically wake this job up and say, do your stuff. Hidden here under the I, we've simplified the way that this form looks, and we don't present a lot of information unless you hover some of these things. This is telling you exactly what this trigger provides you. It tells you that it's going to fire when data is inserted into the table, and it tells you some things like that are going to be available to you, like column name and row JSON data. And again, the main one we're going to come down to, this row modified JSON data contains the data that was actually modified. So we're going to be using all of that, and each of one of these provides that similar description. This is saying it's when the data was updated. This is saying it's going to record data when it's deleted. And so you're going to get values from before it was changed, before it was deleted. So these three triggers lets us all in one job activate and do something. So the first thing that we're going to do is we want to get this information that is provided in the triggers. One of the things that it doesn't provide is the table name, but we know the name of the table that's being activated because we chose it in the trigger settings. And so I'm going to create a token, a variable, that will hold the table name. And table name is an fact, and so we're going to be able to use that to and I'm just going to put a comment here. This is defining the table that's going to be audited. We're going to use that. The other thing that we're going to do, it's a very straightforward job that we're creating. We're going to add an action that is going to create a new audit. A new audit record is going to get created anytime this trigger fires, and we're going to put stuff in it. I'm going to do a little copy paste development here again. The plant and app ID is going to come from the ID of the record that is going on. In the case of a delete, the ID is blank, so we're using the ID from before. Again, if you're you might want to follow the last episode just to see what all these values come from. But essentially what we're saying is we're going to take all those things that are available from the trigger, plus this table name that we just created, and store them in the audit data. We're not going to fill in audit or JSON or work with that at all. That was something we did in the other episode. And then every time you create a record, it has an output token, which is, I'm going to store it. It's the audit ID. I'm not going to do anything with it right now, but later on we'll be doing something with this. So a really simple job that's been created. It has a name and it works as a particular user. It triggers under insert, update, delete. And it only has two quick actions, one that defines a token and the other that writes a record. And that's it. It's interesting. This is very sophisticated programming, and yet it's very easy to access because of the low code capability. So audit contacts is out here now, and if I've done it right, every time that there's a change to contacts, we're going to start getting audit records. So let's test that theory. If I add contact, and then we will, let's duplicate this tab so that we can look and see. We should have, where is audits? What did I do? We have entities, we have audit, display menu, no parent. I don't know where it is. Maybe I just wasn't looking hard enough. There it is. Okay. So we're looking at our audits, and now a DB insert has happened on the contact table. The ID of the record is number one. The ID of the audit is number one. That's really just a unique item for the audit, but this is the ID of the record in question, and then these are all the values that were created. So old value, because it was an insert, old value is always null. New value is, for example, for the address is Prospect Lake Road. So that's it's already functional, already capturing all the data that we're going to need. But let's test it out. Do a little bit more. We'll make a database update, and do an update. And so if we go back and look at our audits and refresh, we now have another record, which I'm going to sort these backwards by time so we can see them. We now have a on DB update, and only the things that we changed are showing up in this modified JSON data. And I'm going to format them nicely so we can take a look at them. So we can see the city changed from Egremont to Egremont, Mass. The last modified changed from blank to 2. We have a last modified date. The name was filled out, the rating changed, the address changed. Anything that didn't change isn't showing up. So we've captured all the data, and you could stop here. If all you wanted to do was to follow along and make sure to keep good records about what changed in your data, you could stop here. And you can see this is a nice, simple technique. And going back to my only slide for this, this is actually what we've done here. We've rebuilt it. Fight with, there we go. So we've rebuild what we've done previously on a fresh site, and so that's where we are in the process. I wanted to mention, I think I skipped this a little bit. Going back to our objectives, this is what we did, simply and completely. Anytime contact changes, that's being logged automatically to audit. And I just wanted, the part that I skipped over talking about was with code and complexity. If you don't know about this technique in automation, using a trigger to find out when data changes, you might be tempted to go in on your edit screen and try to do a lot of code that says, well, I'm editing a record, here's the values before, and I'm going to write before and after, and it's a lot of code. And by the way, if the record changes outside of the edit screen, you're not capturing it. So it's code, it's complexity, it's hard to maintain, and might not capture all the changes. By doing it in the automation, if the record changes in SQL, it's going to get it's set up as a trigger on the SQL table, and you will get the data. So just want to point out, simplicity is often the answer, and if you find yourself going down a path of lots and lots of code, you need to ask yourself, is there an easier way? And in this case, there is. Okay. So we've got it working, we've got it logging data, and as I said, you could stop here. You've got data, and you could do something with it later if you wanted to. I guess we should do, I'm going to add one more record called test, and then I'm going to delete the record called test. just to show that the on database delete thing works as well. So now we see there was a database insert for record 2 that has the test value in it. And then there was a on DB delete, a delete activity that happened on the test where the old value of for the name is their test. And so we can see what a delete looks like, but just pointing out we've got a complete scenario and it doesn't matter how it changes. And I guess it's probably worth proving that out if we go to SQL console and we go to contact and run a simple update. Update app contact set type equal to type equal to suspect. So we're changing all of them at one time. And we look at this and now we see that lead has become suspect, but in our audits in the same way, we now see on DB update, lead has become suspect for record 1. So it doesn't matter whether we change it in the form or we change it by SQL, we're capturing all the changes. All right, we've succeeded. I hadn't mentioned, but if you have any questions along the way, let me know, and Patrick will be good enough to bring them to my attention. So now we want to go on to the next phase, which is enhance. We want to add an audit details entity, and the idea is this. This JSON data is hard to look at, and I've been showing where we can use something like Notepad++ to be able to format it and make it look nice. But if you wanted to reveal that to a user, it's not very nice. So if we had an audit data, we'll call it an audit detail, and I of course already have prepared this, and I'm going to use it, so we can move right along. If we go to entities and we'll import an entity here called audit data, audit details. It's here in our import. And then we'll take a look at what's in here. You can set up, these are very simple entities to create, and you can type them in, but just to speed our development along, we'll just go in and take a look at them. So we have audit details that's also appearing on the main top level menu, and on our custom properties, I'm getting an audit ID, a column name, new value, old value. These are the only fields that we're getting. I've set the new value and the old value to large text so that regardless of the size of the change that's happening, whether it's a big field, small field, it'll all fit into this. So the idea then is that we now have a table called audit details, and the hope is that as changes are happening, in addition to creating audits that has this information shown in JSON, that we take this same information and put it into audit details. And so we'll be able to see it very simply. And if we were drilling down, trying to understand what changes were happening, we're going to have column name, the old value, the new value. So we can do that. Again, it's pretty simple to do. And we're going to do that by just enhancing our automation a little bit, but also taking advantage of some SQL. So I suppose first, let's explore the SQL a little bit. Find it. Just demonstrate it before we use it. This is the SQL that we're going to use, or something very similar to this. And so the idea is that SQL knows how to look at JSON and do stuff with it. And so if we pass in some JSON in this area right here, this open JSON area, it knows how to pull out the value of column name, new value, old value, and knows how to pull it out. So let's take one of these that we have, one of these audits that were there, and we're just going to take this JSON data and use it here in we're just going to pass it as a string inside of this test SQL. So we run it. And so this SQL, and I'm going to put it here on the clipboard in a minute so you have the access to it, changes that JSON into rows. And so now we have ID of 2, city is blank, name is test. It's got rows of data that we can then manipulate and use to insert into our new entity. And so that's the basis of what we're doing. So here we go. Let's modify our automation job to take advantage of that. So we have our audit contacts. We previously wrote the record and we got an audit ID. We're going to do a new action. So let's close this one up and we'll add it's going to be a SQL action, SQL query. And the purpose of this is I'm just documenting here, right? This is just for convenience, but we're going to create audit. And the query that we're going to be using is this one. And I'm going to put that on the clipboard now if I can find it. In my chat. There it is. Send it to everyone. Okay, so you have it just so that for your records, if you're following along, copy and paste would be great. So here's what it does. It says we're going to get a value called JSON. And if it's null, we want to just set it to an empty array. This is going to keep it from erroring out. Then that select query that we ran just a minute ago is here. And we're going to convert that by using an insert into clause to say insert into the audit detail these different values from this JSON. And so again, this turns it into rows. This is inserting the rows into a table. And so it's all going to happen for us kind of automatically. We got to find the data in those. We have two values that need to be done. There's the JSON, and what JSON are we doing? It's this same JSON that we were writing into the audit record, this row modified JSON. That's the one we're focusing on today, the modifieds. And so that will be passed here. And then the audit ID also has to be passed. And we're going to pass in the audit ID that came off of, notice the IntelliSense had this for us, the audit ID that came off of the record. This is going to be the thing that ties the audit details to one particular audit record. And that is it. By adding this one SQL statement, we now get this whole additional functionality. And so let's test out the theory. I'm going to go back to my contacts and edit a record, and I'm going to change this to my rating up a little bit. I keep getting change myself back to a lead. So I'm making a number of changes. And if we go back and look at the audits, we can see that they're still being tracked. All that's happening here. But that same thing should now be happening in audit details, and it is. So it's taking this data that was in modified JSON data and converting it into the city for audit record 6. Again, I want to point out that audit record 6, this is the detail for it. The city changed from the old value of this to the new value of that. the rating went up. I added a suite, changed from suspect to lead. All that's now happening in data. And so this gives us the opportunity to present this data very well. So for right now, it's manual, right? If we wanted to look at an audit and we're focusing on this this particular audit, we can manually go over to the audit details and focus in on audit ID 6 and see the data that changed. So let's see. Let's keep track of where we are. We've done this. We've enhanced it to add details. But now let's do a better visualization. We want to see audit details as a subtable. So we're here looking at audits and being able to just drill down into this particular record and see it. So we're going to do this. And this, again, is a technique that you can use for other things. It's table within a table or having a subtable that's being displayed. And I'm going to start by cleaning this up. Because we're going to be visualizing this data as a subtable, we no longer need JSON data being displayed here. And so I'm going to clean that up and get rid of it. So we go into audits listing and I'm just going to delete them off of the view. So they're still there. We're just not going to be displaying them. And then, yeah, so I'll do this step at a time so you can see my cleanup process. So now this just has the ID of the records in question, the contact, the change type, but we're no longer seeing what actually changed. To display this, we're going to be adding a button, and the button is going to be taking advantage of a custom detail view. There's actually a functionality for this, so we can say add special button, and we want to show inline details. And so it adds a details button. We can rename this anything we want and provide an icon perhaps, but it adds an action on here called custom detail view. And I'm just going to make a placeholder. We don't have the subtable yet. We're going to have to do that work here in a minute, but at least we can see the functionality happening. So now we have a details and we can click, and when we click, we get a sidebar. I really don't want that as a sidebar, so I'm going to go in and tinker with this a little bit. So I go to my buttons, details, and instead of saying as a right sidebar, I'm going to want to see this inline. And so now when I do the details, if you click details, the subtable is going to appear here. So this is the mechanism I'm going to use. I just need to build out this subtable. And so this is, we're going to take a little detour now and go ahead and get that built. This is the one that's automatically created by Plantain App when we created the audit details entity. I want to create one that just shows the information that I have. So I'm not gonna actually use this one. I'm gonna create a new one, and so we'll step away from this one and do that. I am going to create I'm going to go to our pages functionality and create a new page at the root, and I'm going to call it hidden. I'm just going to make some stuff that's not in the menu, a hidden page to hold this thing, because I'm going to use a embedded page as my technique. So I'm going to make this visible to all users and editable by my developer roles. So we have a page, and now if I find the page, the hidden page, I'm going to go into it and create a new page. And this is going to be we'll create a new page here called Audit Details. I'll call it audit details view. Doesn't matter what we call it, but this is just a place where we're going to, with the same permissions, just a page where we're going to put this kind of content. So we have an audit details page. I can go to it here. And so this is the page where we're going to put this customized view that's going to be able to be embedded as a subtable. So what do we want to do? Well, I want to put a action grid, a listing on this page. And so we'll put it here. And we're going to configure it to display this, just the stuff that we want. So the data source for this is going to be audit details. I want to pull out from audit details just the things that I want. I'm going to put these in order by column name just so it has some kind of order. Again, if we look at audit details, there's this column called column name. And so if we put it in order, then it's going to make sense. And so we'll put it in ascending order, just so it has some kind of order to it. To start with, I'm going to display all of them. I'm not going to have any kind of filtering, so there's no where clause at all. This is going to be my, I'm just going to call it the details listing, so it shows up nicely. The fields that I'm going to want to show are, what do I want? Well, we're definitely going to want the column name, the new value, the old value. I think I'm going to want the audit ID as well. So I'm going to add all of these and then rearrange them a little bit. I'm going to put this last and arrange them like this. So this is going to be, I'm going to clean it up here, column name, and instead of calling it old value, I'm going to call it changed from. Maybe that's a little friendlier for somebody looking at it. And this might be changed to and we'll leave the audit ID on there, just like that. So that's a start. Let's save it and take a look and see what it looks like. So we can see the record and the audit ID. There's only one audit ID out there, right? I guess we could do another one just to show that this is not filtering. So let's add another record. So we have a new record, and so as we look at this hidden page that has this, now we start seeing our sixes and our sevens. We have a couple that's intermingled. We're going to clean this up. So we'll change our details, and I'm going to turn on sync with URL. That'll become important in a little while. And then our data for the audit ID, I'm going to make that filterable. So now we can, with that change, we'll be able to tell it which one we want to work on. So for example, if we only want to see the one from audit ID 7, we can see the change blank to Patrick Anderson. We want to focus on number 6, we can see it changed from Egremont, Mass to Egremont 01252. So where does this get us? So now this table is almost ready to consume. We've got to do one more thing, which is in this details table on the settings, we're going to make it consumable by coming down to these advanced UI settings and enable the embedding. The embedding gives us this nice code to say what we want to see. And we do have to save that so that it knows that, so that the embedding enabling is there. So with just that one change, this table is now able to be used in this spot here. And so we'll go back and do that now. So if we go to our audits listing and this button that's providing that placeholder in the custom detail view, we can erase that. We don't need a placeholder anymore, but I'm going to switch to HTML and paste this embed code into it. And I'm not going to change it right now. You're going to see it's going to show everything, hopefully. But just using that embed code says that it's going to bring that in when the button is clicked. So now we can click, it doesn't matter which one we click here. It brings in the details. And again, because we haven't told it what to do, it's bringing in everything. So 6 and 7 and however many other hundreds of audit details were there, it's bringing in everything. But I'm doing it step by step here. We'll go back to our hidden page. When I turned on the filtering for item number 6, up in the URL, we got this. The filter-audit ID equals 6. So this is what we're going to need to pass to tell it which one we want to focus on. So we can go back here and in our audit listing, we can modify that embed code to just bring the thing that we want. So again, whereas our embed code, it's in this custom detail view. We have to click here and then switch to HTML. We can see it. So if we start digging into what this embed code says, it's running some JavaScript. We don't have to concern ourselves about that. But the URL where it's getting it is this audit details view, and there's a question mark right here. We can pass parameters, and so I'm going to copy what I've done over here, and we got to make it be nice here, but we're going to pass the filter audit ID of 6, and now this code will always work with 6. Well, 6 isn't useful, but we can go back and see that we have the ID here. This is the audit ID. Oh, I'm in the wrong place. In audit details, we have this audit ID, and that's the one that we want to tie it to the ID, the audit. I'm babbling a little bit, but we're going to do that. So back to our button, our embed code. Instead of hard coding a 6, we're going to pass ID. I believe that's going to be right, and save and refresh. So hopefully now when we click the audit ID of 6, we're passing in a 6, the filtering mechanism, and so we only see the details that were associated with that particular change. If we click this one, it's passing a 7, and so we see audit ID 7 and all the things related to that. All right, since I see we're 2 minutes to the hour, I'm going to summarize where we are, and then we'll talk about where we're going next time. What we did today was in our entities, we created an audits plus an audits detail. The audits was the one that was previously done on a different episode of Low Code Café, and you should go take a look at that. But by adding audits detail, we made a data place to be able to take that JSON that comes from in the automation trigger. We're able to parse that out using some SQL that I gave you and turn that into rows that can then be inserted into audit details. Those audit details, then we've done table within a table to be able to see them. And so we got through to visualize. We are seeing this as a subtable. And since you now know how to do subtables, if you have tabular data that you want to be able to display. It doesn't have to be audit data, but if you're looking at a listing and you want to display a subordinate listing, you have the ability to do that by enabling the embed code and getting it and using it. So what we didn't get to is two things: a simple restore capability and data-driven events. And so hopefully that's something that we'll take on in a next episode. But the idea is, for example, that if we were to look at this database update and this, when it changed from Prospect Lake Road to Prospect Lake Road Suite A, if this was a mistake, it'd be nice to have a button here or within this functionality, you just click and say restore, and it would change the value back. And that's something very easy to do. We just ran out of time, so we'll do that next time to be able to revert changes. And then in the same way, this data changed from suspect to lead. And in the same way that we had a data trigger that was responded to a database change, we can now look for, do we have a case where our old value was suspect and our new value was lead? Let's act on that and do something with that. Send an email to somebody or create some other records, or just generally respond to that change. So those are things that we can do in future episodes, but at least we've built the functionality, built the base for it, and made it nicely visible. And we didn't come anywhere close to adding our isDeleted feature, but that's something we can hold out for another episode as well. Glad that you joined us for this hour. We'd be happy to engage in questions with that. That's something that often happens in Low Code Campfire, which again happens on Friday at 10 o'clock. So we'd encourage you to join us for that. If you have questions about this technique and where we're going with it, or ideas about how we can do it better, we'd be happy to engage with that. But that's our hour. Thanks for spending it with us, and we will see you again in 2 weeks.